literally teenagers die of embarrassment, and it's the truth. They are so embarrassed in front of their friends to be different. Like, oh, they don't want to say, oh, well, can you make it without this? Or and some of them don't even carry their EpiPens because they're embarrassed. And they literally die of embarrassment.
Hey, friends and listeners of the Switch for Good podcast. Yep, that's you. I have some really exciting news. Dotsie and I have started a Switch for Good podcast Facebook group. We created it so we can build a community of fans that will help us improve the show and deliver on the topics that you want to learn more about. So we want to hear what your favorite content is, what you want more of, and what you want less of. And if you like the length of the show, Dotsie and I are always talking about the length of the show, right, Dotsie?
Yes.
We want to tailor our show around the needs and desires of our incredible listeners, almost 500,000 of you. And it's really simple to join. Just go to our Switch for Good Facebook page. That's Switch, the number 4, and then Good. And then click on groups. And there we are, the Switch for Good podcast chat. You can post directly in the group, share ideas, talk to other listeners, and connect with like-minded folks. So go, run, join our Facebook group and tell us what you want. As someone with a sweet tooth, I'm super excited to introduce our next guest. Debbie Adler is the very definition of a Renaissance woman. She's been a Wall Street accountant, an actress, a comedian, a playwright, and a television development executive. But 16 years ago, she found her true calling as the creator of the very first vegan, sugar-free, gluten-free, and allergy-free bakery in Los Angeles. Sweet Debbie's Organic Cupcakes caters to everyone from studio heads, Hollywood A-list entertainers, and, well, to folks like me, people with a sweet tooth. Debbie is also the writer of cookbooks like Sweet, Savory, and Free and Sweet Debbie's Organic Treats. Her most recent book, The Mediterranean Plate, plant-based recipes free from gluten, salt, oil, and sugar, will ignite your taste buds while boosting your health and overall well-being. Debbie's cookbooks and bakery have been featured in the LA Times and on NPR, and her recipes have been published on many popular websites and blogs. It's a treat to have Debbie Adler with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show, Debbie. Let's start with what you're most known for, which is your bakery, Sweet Debbie's Organic Cupcakes. What inspired you to go from all those other jobs that are very, very different from opening up a bakery to opening up a bakery?
I was hungry. I was hungry for a cupcake in 2005, and I wanted a sugar-free cupcake because I knew I had done a lot of research. I was always into nutrition, and I knew that sugar wasn't good for us. It wasn't as popular as it is today to have no sugar. So back in 2005, you probably don't remember, there was nothing on the market that was sugar-free that didn't have sucralose. And so even
that was the end of the fat-free craze. So it was like everything was stuffed with more sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was sugar or sucralose. And so that was out. And I didn't have a baking background, nor did I have a cooking background, but I knew that I wanted a sugar-free cupcake. So I went to the store and I saw what was available at the time. It was xylitol. I don't use that anymore, but at the time that's what it was. And I started to create basically sugar-free treats that didn't have sucralose. And I got my cupcake. It sounds easy. It was hard because I didn't know what I was doing. So it tasted like a hockey puck at first, but over time, it took months and months. I got it to taste really good. And then people were saying, you should start a bakery. I'm sure other people want sugar-free. And I thought, yeah, why not? So all of a sudden, so I opened Sweet Debbie's in 2006, and all of Hollywood came knocking on my ovens. It was what people wanted. Other people were looking for what I had just come up with, which was the sugar-free, vegan, and gluten-free. However, it wasn't allergy-free yet because my son was born in 2008 with the extreme dairy allergy and other allergies as well, but that's what he anaphylaxed to when he was 1, was a little taste of ice cream. And so that's when I realized other children have these allergies, because I got involved with the Food Allergy Network and everything, and I found millions of these kids were anaphylaxing to all these allergens. So I decided to make it allergy free. So that was in 2008, and even more people came to the bakery because they really needed allergy free as well as the sugar free and the vegan. I mean, the vegan, it was just the need for the allergy free was very, very dire for these kids. So that was how I came to it. It's just like my own personal wanting a healthy treat. And then obviously other people wanted healthy treats.
Yeah, gosh. As you probably know, last year a study came out and dairy has moved to the very top as the top anaphylactic allergen in children under 16. Yeah. And there's still not nearly enough awareness around it. Please do share your story with your son and how you figured it out.
Okay.
You said it was a bite of ice cream. Is that when you found out, and what happened, and what was the journey to freedom for him?
Sure. Okay, so it was 2009. He had just turned 1 2 weeks earlier, so it was 2 weeks after his first birthday, and we were just walking around on the street, and there was a shop, and they gave tastes of the ice cream, and I just gave him a lick. It really wasn't that much, and he seemed fine, but when we got home 20 minutes later, he started to throw up, and it wouldn't stop. And eventually he passed out. And my husband, who's he's a physician, was ready to give CPR. That's how close he came to not breathing. So I called 911, and they came and they took us to the hospital. And it was the wrong hospital, because we knew what was happening. Not that we didn't have any knowledge of his allergies, but my husband, being a physician, knew he was going through anaphylaxis. And so the initial hospital did not understand, well, maybe it's a bug, no, he is anaphylaxing to the dairy. Okay. So we had to be transferred to UCLA. And that's when we were introduced to the pediatric unit. They understood what was going on, and they were able to reverse this reaction that he was having. And we went to an allergist soon after that, and we found out through a blood test that he had a lot of different allergies, as well as not just the blood test, but as he turned 2, between 1 and 2, he anaphylaxed to other things like flaxseed, which is a very unusual. I gave him a flax cracker, and same thing, anaphylaxed to a flax cracker. So that was one of his allergens. So we ended up living our lives without going to restaurants, without going on planes, with, birthday parties were a nerve-wracking event. I had to bring his own little treat and his own food. And so it was, like walking around in bubble wrap without, any kind of normalcy. And then when he was 10, UCLA and Stanford University came up with this protocol that first they give the child Xolair, which sort of suppresses an immune response. Then after 2 shots of Xolair, which is an asthma, it's usually used for asthma, but they found, I don't know how they figured this out, they found that the Xolair helps kids not anaphylax if they're given a little bit of their allergen. So they gave my son, and he was in a clinical trial. This was a clinical trial. It wasn't a proven thing. So he was in a clinical trial, and they gave him the Xolair twice, and then little powders, minute portions of all his allergens. They were able to do 5. So this was a very unique type of desensitization, where they were able to desensitize multiple allergens all at once. That had never been done before because it was too risky. But with the Xolair, they were able to put in 5 of the allergens and then get him to be desensitized to all 5 at once, because otherwise you spend the rest of your life desensitizing. Well, let's desensitize to cashews. That takes 18 months. Let's desensitize to dairy. That takes 18. So this condenses the amount of time you have to desensitize, and it worked. And now he can eat his allergens without anaphylaxing. He may get a little itch or a little rash, but he doesn't ever anaphylax anymore. And to dairy as well. I mean, he doesn't like ice cream, which, I guess it's a response to having this reaction. Like, what kid doesn't like ice cream? My son, he doesn't like ice cream. So, or pizza, by the way, like any normal kid thing that you would think kids love, he does not like at all. We can never have these things. But anyway, the point is, if it touches his plate or whatever, this cross contamination, he won't anaphylax.
Well, it must be a huge relief to you. Was this an 18th month protocol for this also, but with all 5? And how did that work? Did you gradually up the dose so that what does the body do?
Yeah, so the body does start to realize that this is not an enemy. That's basically a simple way to put it. The body starts to realize, oh, I shouldn't react to this because this is not something, this is not a foreign body. And as you increase the dose, it can take on more and more. And eventually now it's my responsibility. I have to keep this up. I have to give him, I don't know, every couple of days a pill. I make the pills myself. You don't have to do it in a capsule form. You can just put it in food, or give the food, give a glass of milk, but my son doesn't want it that way. So I just do powders and make my own capsules. And every 3rd day, I give him a capsule so his body continues to know these are okay to eat. And
you're no longer having to use the immune suppressant along with the
exact
food.
Right.
Okay, so you're giving him a capsule of the food itself.
Only the capsule of food, right?
Okay.
So he has a more normal life now. He can eat out. We can go to restaurants. We can go on a plane. Whereas up until 10, we did none of that. It was a very different kind of life. And also, not to mention, when he went to school, we would be on edge. Are we going to get a call? Because some people would bring birthday treats and not tell me. Normally they would, but if they forgot to tell me and they would give him a treat, it was just like, you're always on edge. But now I'm not, because I know, okay, so if he gets, whatever, cross-contamination, he'll, get an itchy throat, he'll take a Benadryl and he'll be fine.
Is this something that can work for all degree of allergies? Because I understand from actually listening to some of your interviews that allergies are more prevalent now, especially among children.
Yes. I don't understand why more parents don't put their kids into these programs. It's not a clinical trial anymore, by the way. You can actually ask for it it's been approved by the FDA to now be a protocol. Any allergist can do this if they want to. I mean, some are afraid, but go to an allergist that can do it for your child, and you don't have to walk around in fear. And I know people who don't do it, I don't understand why. I guess they're afraid. I guess they're afraid their child will anaphylax, but you're in a hospital. It's done in a hospital setting. So God forbid if something does happen, you're right there, and they'll do the proper protocol to reverse whatever's happening. But that very rarely happens. They're very careful. And so, yes, everybody has access. It is something that is now available worldwide. And when I hear about people dying from their allergens, I get so upset because it happens every day. We're still connected to that food allergy network, and you hear about it every day, even adults. Some, and a lot of times it's the restaurant. It's usually from a restaurant. They say, oh yeah, no, there are no sesame seeds, and there are sesame seeds, and then they die. And so you have to be so careful who you're talking to. You don't talk to the waiter. Ask to speak to the chef or who's preparing your food. go to the back of the kitchen or ask them to come out to you. Don't rely on the waiter to relay the story or, you know, what the allergens are, because there's not going to be, it's like telephone. It won't get translated properly. And then, you know, that there's going to be an issue with, I don't know, either going to the hospital or worse. So there is a protocol. I highly suggest everyone do it, so you don't have to live in fear, because that, I know what that feels like.
Yeah. Where would people easily find this protocol?
Well, they'll find it at any allergist's office. There are
Okay.
allergists that do it in their office.
Okay. And you said some are a bit afraid, so you've got to find a
Right, so,
brave allergist.
Right, you have to find a fearless allergist.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are doing it now. I mean,
Okay.
this was back, you know, 4 years ago. So I think a lot of allergists are doing it now. And I'm sure people, if there's a will, there's a way. They could find someone who will do it for
Mhm.
them, and then they don't have to live in fear. And it's also for their child, not for your own, for the parent, but also the child when they grow older. You know, you don't want to have, when they go out with their friends, having to, you know, worry. And, you know, some of them are like literally teenagers die of embarrassment, and it's the truth.
Yeah.
They are so embarrassed in front of their friends to be different. Like, oh, you know, they don't want to say, oh, well, can you make it without this? Or and some of them don't even carry their EpiPens because they're embarrassed. And they
Mhm.
literally die of embarrassment. Most of these deaths are from or with teenagers who don't, you know, want to be cool in front of their friends. And it's very, very sad. So do your kid a favor and do the protocol. So yes, you still have to carry your EpiPen. I'm not saying you don't carry your EpiPen. My son still carries his EpiPen, but at least there's like a protection.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard that there's several reasons that people do get allergies, and tell me what your thoughts are. One is that we're too clean, so our bodies don't develop a resistance, or they don't know from different foods, so that it's or germs. So it's good for the mother to ingest a lot of variety of foods before when she's pregnant. And also, but I've also heard people, and this was in the 80s, that a friend of mine used to have this protocol where he wouldn't eat the same thing more than within 3 days, because he didn't want to develop an allergy to a food from eating it too much. So that seems to be totally different sides of the spectrum.
Right.
Enlighten us about why people get allergies.
Yeah. Okay. There are a lot of theories. I'm laughing because I don't think that's one of them. I don't think eating the same thing 3 days in a row is one of them. But this is what I think it is. I'll go through the theories. It could be any of them, and even the allergist doesn't know. What I think it is we have introduced GMOs into our food supply, and that started in 1984. And if you look at a graph, the incidence of autism and food allergies is like this, starting in 1984 up until today, like this. It's almost like a, you know, almost like a 90-degree angle. There's a clear correlation between the food supply and the GMOs and allergies. Another thing that I think it has to do with is your genetics. My husband had asthma as a child, and it's called epigenetics. So we had a son, and so he gets that, whatever it is, that gene that presents itself even worse. So not only did he didn't have asthma when he was a baby, it was called reactive airway disease, similar to asthma. In addition to that, he got eczema, which is a clear sign that you're also going to get food allergies. If a baby has red, you know, that eczema look, you know, you see like that blotchy red on their arms or their back of their legs, that's a clear sign that they probably have food allergies. And that is because either the parents or further down the road, you had someone who had the asthma or some sort of immune condition that you're now passing on to your offspring, and it becomes something worse. You mentioned the hygiene theory. Maybe, yes, because it's true. Amish kids do not get food allergies. So there is something to that. You know, they're working on the dirt and the farm and the pigs so maybe there's something to that. And we're so, clean and scrubbing, and a lot of city kids do get food allergies, whereas, kids who live on farms don't as much. So, that's the hygiene theory. So that is a possibility. But I don't think that is it. It could be part of it, because I think, I grew up in the city, I don't think, and I didn't have food allergies, so I don't know exactly. I think it's more about who your parents are and what kind of situation they had growing up. If they had allergies, like I do have hay fever, and that also can, as an epigenetic thing, can turn into a food allergy for offspring. So, yeah.
But we don't have any studies at all that connect either GMOs or epigenetics to allergies. This is shocking to me.
Well, they're doing the studies now, and it is starting to connect. It is. I mean, I have to do some more research to give you an exact study, but they are connecting that to the autism rise, to the food allergy rise. It is connected. It's got to be, because when I was growing up, nobody had food allergies. Now,
there's a lot. So you wrote the book Sweet, Savory, and Free: Insanely Delicious Plant-Based Recipes without any of the top 8 food allergens. So that's extraordinary, because how you did it. So let's go through what they are and how common they are, and then we want to definitely talk about delicious allergen-free food that's in that book.
Sure. Yes. Well, I don't know. I find it very exciting to be challenged that way, to not use what everyone else is using, which is usually the nuts and the seeds and the oil and the the eggs. And so that to me is like a fun challenge. And that's what I did with the second book, with Sweet, Savory, and Free, was to use, like in a muffin, let's say, to use pumpkin puree or to use banana puree instead of an egg. There are certain uses of different, things that replace the egg, the flax egg, flax and water, that becomes your binder. There are certain things. Instead of nuts, I used hemp seeds or chia seeds. So it was just a nice, fun, experiment maybe, to figure it all out. And of course, I didn't put the recipe in if it wasn't delicious, and nobody knows the difference when they eat it or make it. Everything just comes out really good. And so the typical way to cook doesn't have to be so. If you do something differently, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to be as good. Because I know people have a preconceived notion of, well, if it doesn't have oil, if it doesn't have salt, if it doesn't have sugar. So I just have people eat my food, and then they go up for seconds, thirds, and fourths. And then I know, okay, it's pretty good. They're not missing anything. So
what are the top? So we've got dairy, we've got eggs, we've got nuts. What are the other 5 food allergens, those top 8?
So it's wheat, gluten, eggs, dairy, soy, peanuts, tree nuts, fish, or shellfish. So that's what it is.
Gotcha. Okay. I didn't know fish was there. I knew shellfish was. I was surprised by fish. Okay.
Some people are allergic to fish. Yeah. So that's
What can parents do to maybe avoid their kids getting allergies?
Oh, God.
In the first place, do you know?
To avoid it in the first place. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I had heard that if mothers ate peanut butter during their pregnancy, their kids, and I don't know if that's true.
I don't think it's true.
Okay. So there's really
true. No, I don't know what you can do to prevent it. I don't know. I would have to research that. I don't think there is anything you could do to prevent it. But if you find out that your child has allergies now, there is something you can do about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you could prevent it.
Because one of my pet peeves is in vegan baking, those that haven't done it a lot and don't really know what they're doing, probably traditional bakers that have to serve like a vegan gala or something, they just do it. And it feels to me like when they take out the fat, so when they take out the butter, they don't exactly know what to do. So they just stuff it with a bunch of sugar. So a lot of times the bakery items come out just super sweet, way sweeter than you would ever want them, and not necessarily that consistency you're looking for. But I've definitely had amazing vegan bakery items that people know what they're doing. The people that know what they're doing, like you, what's the trick so that it's not overly sweet, but still that great consistency as if it had fat in it, butter in it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just, with each recipe I came up with well, the first time I did this was my Sweet Debbie's Organic Treats book. This was the second one I did it with. And I guess for each one, I decided that I was going to use a different filler. Like you said, well, what's the oil? So like I'm looking at my chocolate pudding pie with seed crust. So that I'm looking at this right now. So for this one, see, each one has its own unique personality. So like for one muffin, I'm not going to use the same oil per se as a seed a seed crust. So what I used here was sunflower seed butter. So that's the oil. So sunflower seed butter tastes like peanut butter. So I figured all these tricks.
Yeah. But it's so mild. I love that kind of butter. It doesn't have that strong.
Yeah, it's very mild. And if you roast it slightly, you can't tell the difference. It tastes like peanut butter. So I figured that out, and then I made the seed crust and with dates. So you soak your dates, your medjool dates. I figured medjool dates are plump, they're juicy, you're not going to miss any oil, and you're not using refined sugar. And by the way, avocado. So you wouldn't guess that avocado is in this, but using a whole food, you're doing yourself a favor, your body a favor. It's giving you the fatty oils, but you're not putting in refined oil, which is a very big difference. So for this one, because it's chocolate, I'm using avocado in the pudding. And so you're getting that rich, fatty, delicious flavor and texture and mouthfeel. And you would never know, because the cacao masks the green in the, like I couldn't make a vanilla pudding with avocado. So that's
the cacao. I've made a chocolate pudding with the avocado and the cacao, and I didn't understand what was killing. You just couldn't taste the avocado at all, but the cacao just really okay.
Yeah. And now this was back in 2017, but now I make my chocolate pudding with sweet potato, like a pureed sweet potato. Same thing. You can't tell it has sweet potato. You just taste the creamy chocolate pudding. So it's just a matter of doing, trial and error, and it's, pain in the neck. But when you figure it out, and you have it forever, and it's delicious, and you're doing yourself, your children a favor by giving them healthy desserts. And you have to have dessert. Not have dessert.
When you say sugar-free, what does that mean now? It meant xylitol back in 2006.
Oh, right. I forgot to tell you the update. So, right. So I found that people were having digestive issues with the xylitol, and I agree, it's not the best. So I evolved to coconut nectar. And coconut nectar, and I have to tell you something about coconut, by the way, that remind me. So coconut nectar is similar to maple syrup, but it's low glycemic, which is good. You don't want a high glycemic, if you have nothing else, use the maple syrup. But the coconut nectar is low glycemic. It has a lot of vitamins, minerals, and when they extract it from the coconut tree, they extract it at low temperatures. So all that good stuff, the enzymes and minerals and vitamins, are kept intact. So you're getting a pretty healthy, sweet flavor. And I only use a quarter of a cup. And it's very nice, and it adds sweetness, and that's what I evolved to, and dates. So it depends on what the what the treat is. I can sometimes just use the dates, and the dates are great. Dates are very healthy, and especially if you combine it with seeds, you're counteracting that spike in your blood sugar with something like a protein that'll even it out.
Coconut nectar, just to clarify, does that come from the meat of a coconut itself, or does it come from the tree?
It comes from the trees, the sap. It's the sap. It's not from the meat. It's from the sap. And let me just tell you a story about coconut. So people automatically assume that when you say cocoa nut, that it's a nut. It is not. It is not a nut. Coconuts are drupes, which is a one-seeded fruit. And I know this because I thought my son was allergic to coconut because of the same fallacy, that thinking where, well, coconut, it must be a nut. So one day, accidentally, I was doing, I don't know what it was, some sort of a spread for a magazine, and my son was in there, and I had put coconut in one of my coconut cupcakes, and he was very young at the time, just took a bite of it, and there was coconut in it. And I was like, and I was so scared. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, coconut, oh my God. And nothing happened. And I'm looking at him, are you okay? And nothing happened. And it had a lot of coconut in it. And I realized, let me look this up, because I thought if he's having nuts, he's going to react. It's not a nut. And that was my revelation. And after that, he was having coconut. Like my husband wouldn't even let me put coconut oil on my skin. It's like, no, that's not good for Sean. And it was just so funny. Later on, we realized he never had that coconut allergy because coconut's not a nut. And when people yell at me, they say, well, especially with this book, because it says allergy free on it. And people would say, oh, I can't have coconut. How dare you say it's nut free? I was like, excuse me, coconut is not a nut. If you have a coconut allergy, I believe you, but that's not a nut. You have a coconut allergy. That's a different thing.
It's a fruit allergy.
Yeah, it's a different food allergy. It's not a nut allergy.
Yeah.
I do use coconut nectar in this book. And so people were, not everyone, it's just you remember the people who yell at you. Most people were very grateful for this book. But, the two people that had a coconut allergy were very upset. And that's a totally separate allergy. So if you have someone who has a nut allergy, they're not necessarily allergic to coconut. And I live, it's like living, my son is living proof of that.
Can we talk about veganizing and de-allergenizing desserts or meals still? Because I think Dotsie touched on it, and you mentioned some alternatives to eggs, which were, I heard, pumpkin puree, flax egg, another kind of puree. I'm curious about the milks that you prefer to cook with, and the flours that you use instead of wheat flour.
Absolutely. So that's a great question. So, well, the flour I use is from my bakery, and it's a very high protein, low glycemic, very healthy mix of gluten-free flours. And I just make it gluten-free because I don't want to deal with cross-contamination. Not everybody needs gluten-free. I don't need gluten-free. A lot of my customers don't, but there are some people who do need it. And you know what? It is so good. I realized that I'll just make it gluten-free. Nobody, people who need it gluten-free, okay, they'll know, but the people who don't need it gluten-free won't know the difference because it's so good. So I came up with a recipe for the flours that I use, and I actually give the recipe in both this book, this was the second book, and my third book, which just came out today, The Mediterranean Plate. It has quinoa flour, it has sorghum, it has millet, and it has tapioca. And it's a very specific ratio that I give you in the book. And you could buy each flour separate, make a big batch, keep it in the freezer, and it keeps for 2 years in an airtight container. So you don't waste it. It doesn't go bad. Just keep it in the freezer airtight. So that's what I use, and it's delicious. It's not grainy, because I know a lot of gluten-free flours are very grainy, and they use, I don't know what they use, but it's, I don't, that's why I had to come up with my own, because I just didn't like the gluten-free flours that were on the market at the time. Maybe they've improved, but this is, I know, very, very healthy. The quinoa flour, it's high in protein, the sorghum, the millet, it has melatonin. It's very relaxing. You could meditate while you bake. It's just a very nice combination. And you want to know how I veganize with the milk? Well, I make my own milks every 3 days, and it's very easy, very, very easy. All you do is you take maybe a cup, if you don't want it to be that thick, maybe 3/4 of a cup of whatever seed. If you can't use nuts, I mean, now I could have it in the house because my son won't react. I use cashews or almonds, and I use it 3/4 of a cup or a cup to 3 cups of water plus a medjool date, because I love it to be a little bit sweet, and blend it in a Vitamix, and it's delicious. It is absolutely delicious. If you can't have nuts, then you can use hemp seeds. Hemp milk is delicious. Yeah. I do that too sometimes. So you just the same amount, like 3/4 of a cup to 3 cups water plus a medjool date, and then you have the most delicious milk you can imagine. Don't buy the store-bought, that they're not good, and they put oil, and I don't even know why they put oil and salt and all this crap. You don't need that. You just do it the way I say, or sunflower seeds. You could put anything. You can make milk out of anything, any seed, any nut. I mean, some taste better than others, but that's how you do it. You make your own, invest in a Vitamix, because I think a regular blender, you'll probably get chunks. That's what I hear from other people. Yeah. Just get a really good high-speed blender, and that's how you make your milk. And you don't have to see, there's no sacrifice, is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to sacrifice. You don't say, oh, well, I can't have that. You can have anything, no matter what your allergy, no matter what, how vegan you are, or whatever restrictions you think you might have. There's such an abundance of what to do that you will not feel deprived.
Yeah. You could also, there's some wonderful, you could get an almond cow or a no cow. There's little units that make the milk for you, right? You just put them in there and they do the thing, because God forbid you press the blender button, right? But anyway, you can. But Alexandra, I'm thinking about our dear friend Joan Eifland and her episode on food addiction, and she was very clear how food addiction works, and it is very connected to highly, highly processed foods, right? Where it goes through many processes to get to that final output. And as I'm hearing you speak, I'm hearing almost no process, or one process, if we want to call it that, like the milk that you just talked about, right? You just water, a date, and the almonds, and it is blended up. So that's like one process it goes through, but it's still in its original nutrient state, if you will. Right. So I'd love for you to speak on that some. Joan was just on, we just aired her episode again 2 episodes ago, the only one we've ever re-aired, because it was so popular. People understanding and peeling back the layers and unraveling food addiction, what it is, where it comes from, and what is a highly processed food. Will you share with us what a minimally to low, almost no processed food is?
It is just taking food that was grown, or a grain, and eating it in its state, the whole state. I mean, not to say you can't cut it up. You like an avocado, you just, whatever you do, just cut it up. Don't cook it. So I know some people put it in the oven and they make all sorts of weird things. Don't do that. Just have the avocado. You make grains, sprout it, or buy it sprouted, because that's when the nutrients start to really take effect. And then, cook it very, very lightly. After you sprout it, which means just, letting the sprouts grow, over a certain period of time, after you pour water, there's a certain method to it. You're getting a lot of nutrients that way, and then cook it very lightly. Some you could even just not even cook. But I do cook the grains, and then you have basically a whole food, whatever it is. And so it's just not, it's not taking the food and doing a lot of things to it so that you're just draining it of its original nutrients. Yeah. And that's basically what you don't want to do. And I think the food addiction part comes in when you start to buy the packaged foods that have the oil and the sugar, and that's what you get addicted to, is that really sweet, fatty taste, rather than cooking yourself, which, all right, even if you do cook it or add something to it, it's not going to give you that same feeling as something you buy in a store has those excess oils and sugar.
Right. And just highly processed to be able to get it into the package, for it to be able to be in the package, and you can still eat it 2 years later. Right. So it's got to go through quite the process to be able to be shelf stable, for example.
Right.
Yeah. And salt too, of course. A lot of
salt
in
yeah.
those things.
Right.
So you love sweets, and you opened a bakery where you were around sweets all the time. Right. Since we're on the topic of food and our reaction to it, did you struggle with moderation yourself, especially in the beginning, or because your treats were more whole food, they were less addictive?
Yeah, they're not addictive at all. And I think I just have I just know when to stop. I get full really easily. Like if I have a muffin or a cookie, I'm full if I have it with coffee or tea, and that's it. Like I'm satisfied with just one of whatever it is I'm craving. I know not everybody's like that, but it's just very natural for me. I let myself always have dessert. If my freezer is stuffed with desserts that I've made, and I don't feel guilty about it. I know they're healthy, and all right, so they're, maybe they have high calories. I don't know. But it doesn't matter because it's, I don't count, I've never counted calories. And not that I was never overweight, I was back in college, but I didn't eat this way back then. But it's not about counting calories. And I have to get that through to people because they're always asking me about calorie count. It's not about calories, and it's such a bad way of doing things, because then food becomes, it's not fun. And it becomes laborious. I used to know people who weighed their food. It's like, what are you doing? You do not have to weigh your food. Just eat healthy, big portions of plants and grains, and put on a healthy dressing. And you don't have to be spare the dressing, because people say, oh, just a little dressing. No, you don't have to do a little dressing. If you're making your own dressing, like a beautiful vinaigrette, with no oil, and just like stuff it with good stuff and then shake it up, you have a dressing that you could pour as much as you want, because it doesn't have the heavy oil in it. And so I don't know what the question was, but I don't remember. But that's just the way I am. I do eat sweets every day. I just like you, I have a sweet tooth, but that's not a bad thing. It used to be considered a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing when you're eating nuts and seeds and dates.
And the whole food.
It's a whole food, and it's put together with, whatever, cacao, and everything is healthy, and you just make it into a cookie. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There it is again, the whole food versus the, pared down food. We want to talk about your book. Congratulations on that. And tell us a little bit about this new book. It's called The Mediterranean Plate, Plant-Based Recipes Free from Gluten, Salt, Oil, and Sugar. Yes. What kind of recipes are in the book? And what were some of your, once again, the substitutions for the oil, or did you have to make cheese? Is there cheese?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm shaking my head. No, yeah, there is cheese. There is a feta feta recipe made from tofu. Yeah, I mean, the oil thing really is very easy. I mean, maybe because I've been doing it for so long. I just like, if you want to do a saute, you can use soy sauce, you can use carrot juice, you can use wine. I mean, I don't use wine usually, but there is one recipe. There's a mushroom marsala where that's one exception. I do use wine in there. So there are a lot of different ways you can saute your vegetables. Or saute whatever you're sauteing, mushrooms, even grains, with a little bit of a vinegar, a juice, any orange juice, and that becomes your oil. You don't have to use oil. So, and then, like I said, with the dressings, you know, you use seeds or just, you know, mix up with vinegars and different herbs and spices, and you've got a delicious dressing. And there's, you know, there really is no deprivation. I mean, if you, I mean, I'm just, whoops. If you look at the recipes, maybe I have to send you the book. You can see there is no deprivation. You know, this is like a lima bean hummus, no oil. These are spinach croquettes. You know, you can make this, you know, for your kids. It's delicious. No oil. You just bread it and you bake it. These are azuki bean burgers with tzatziki sauce. There's I make moussaka. This is Moroccan meatballs. I mean, does this look like you're depriving yourself of anything?
No. For those of you who are not watching on YouTube, it's just picture after picture of the most delectable looking food that looks like it's filled with oil, and it's not. It's gorgeous.
It's a flatbread. And by the way, there's no flour in the flatbread. It's cauliflower. And so
Nice.
I figured out, because there were so many pizzas, the cauliflower pizzas in the stores have dairy
Yeah.
and egg. That's not good for someone who's vegan. So I said, we've got to figure this out, because I don't want to be deprived of the cauliflower pizza. I want to figure out how to make it without the cheese and the egg. So I did. And so there are 2 recipes in here, the Mediterranean plate, that have a cauliflower crust, obviously no cheese, no eggs, but I figured out how to keep it together. So
is it the flax egg? Because that's usually what's in the ones that I see that are at the pizza store. It's the egg. Did you use a flax egg, or
Yeah.
what did you do?
yeah, there's a flax egg in it. Yeah. Yeah. And it holds together. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell people how to make that flax egg. Some will know, but some might not know. And it is just, it's the trick of the century, I think. I just couldn't believe it the first time I baked with a flax egg.
Yeah. So it's like 2 tablespoons of flaxseed to like 4 tablespoons of water, depending on how thick you want the egg. So that's a rough, it's just water and flax. A little more.
Is flaxseed meal though, not just flax seeds?
Right. So ground.
Okay.
It has to be ground.
Right. A good point.
Exactly.
We
Yeah,
need to
that's a
know
good
that.
point.
Yeah.
That's a
Okay.
very good point that you just said. Even if you're not making an egg out of your flax, please grind it, because your body cannot digest flaxseed as a whole. That's the one thing that you should not have whole, is your flaxseed. Like, I know people sprinkle flaxseed on their oatmeal. Please grind it first.
Yeah.
Your body cannot digest flaxseed. It's just it's a waste. You're wasting your money.
Yeah.
If you just put flaxseed on
Comes
your
right through you, and then it's in the
right
poop.
through.
You can see it.
There's not going to be any health benefit if you don't grind. Grinding it, yes, you absorb all the nutrients, everything that's good about flax you can get. And I tell people in here, grind your flax, even if it's not for a flax egg.
And another tip I just recently learned a couple weeks ago from my friend chef Jason Robel is keep it in the fridge. I just didn't know that. He was like acting like it was obvious, but my flaxseed meal, he said it'll go rancid in under a month. And I've had mine. I mean, I put it on my salads, and so it's probably been in there for 6 months. I threw it away. And just tips for people is refrigerate. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do for creaminess for cheese sauces or sauces if you don't use like cashews?
Well, you could use hemp seeds.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way of doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, or sunflower seeds. People have very different ways of doing it. They use nutritional yeast, and that becomes the base of their nacho sauce, or whatever sauce you're trying to make, or cheese that you're trying to replicate. So there are ways around it. With, if you can't have the nuts, you can't have the cashews.
Mhm. So you've talked about experiencing low-level depression throughout your life. How are you dealing with it now? 'Cause you certainly seem like a very upbeat, productive person.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm a different person from, yes, I did, totally did. And yes, there is that tendency, but because I've done so much work and read so many self-help books, and now I'm older, and I realize, and it's so funny because people don't like getting older, and, especially women, like, there's a line on my forehead. It's, the best time of my life. I just turned 60. And like, I can say now, like, I'm not even just saying it, like being this age is much better than being 20.
Yeah.
So much better than being
Amen.
20 or 30, because you know who you are. At least I know who I am, and I know what works, what doesn't work, and I know my purpose in my life. And so when you know your purpose and you set out each day to fulfill that purpose, you don't have time to be depressed, because I think the depression used to come more from, not having what I wanted, or not getting as far as I wanted in my career, whatever it was at the time, and always that want, and it's not good enough. And then when you get past that, and you know what you want, and that you're doing that every single day, and you're helping people, there is no room for the depression. And so you stop feeling sorry for yourself, and you start just doing the work and the journey, and the getting into why you are put on this earth. Because when you're my age, you realize you don't got so many years left. And so what is my legacy? What am I going to leave behind? So you stop, worrying about the nonsense, and you start figuring out, well, I better, get my tushy in gear, because, you want to do something good. You start to think less selfishly and more about the world and the planet and the animals, and what am I leaving behind? How am I going to make it better than how I found it?
Well, I'm 9 months behind you, so I agree with you completely about being happier now than in my 20s, and even and more at peace than in my 30s and
Right.
40s even. So you have some habits for extreme happiness: gratitude, challenge, random acts of kindness, meditation, and exercise.
A lot of people get very frustrated and depressed when they think that other people have more than them. And that's where the gratitude comes in, because I know a lot of people say, well, gratitude, but what that means is to know that what you have is what you're meant to have right now, and that's good enough. And boy, you're lucky to have that. Just even if it's just your health, my God, how lucky are we to just have our health? Even if you're not in the house you want to live in, maybe you want a bigger house, maybe you want a nicer car, but those are so, that's not really what's going to make you happy. Because when you get that nicer house or that big, nicer car, it's not going to be the thing that makes you happy. So the gratitude comes with where you are, what you have, and being okay with just being above earth. I talk about just simply, thinking about all the people who have died, and especially now, and I talk about at the time when I did that, just walking above earth is a blessing. So many people have died so young, and we should be so grateful that we are still above earth, and we can still make a difference. And that alone, that gives you everything you need. You could still make a difference. You could still change your life because you are alive. Exercise. I love, I'm not a big we have to go to the gym person. I just like doing things, a little bit at a time. So if I go to the living room, that's where I do my yoga. If I go to the bedroom, that's where I do my Pilates. And 5 minutes at a time. I'm not talking like I'm doing an hour here, an hour there. I just do a little bit. And that makes me feel better, just 5 minutes. Because some people don't like doing an hour. I don't like doing an hour worth of exercise at a time. So just like a little bit of exercise, a walk, like I walk my dog. That's a whole other story about being happy. Is I never wanted to have pets because I never grew up with pets, but my son insisted, and I said, okay, and I got a dog, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me because he's the love of my life and has made me so empathetic to animals, that has changed my life. So I take my dog for a walk every day, and that makes me happy, and you listen to music. So those are things, and you find what's good for you. I love dancing. Dancing. I'm not saying you have to be, in a ballroom, but just like in your kitchen to good music, that makes you happy. It just brings you, music does something to you that just normal everyday does not. It lifts you up, especially if you like the song. So, those are the things that I think people have to remember when, you have a bad day, there are certain things you do and it automatically lifts you up.
I love what you said about doing the work. I definitely agree with you about gratitude. I also like to put reverence in there and meditation and exercise and challenge. But I think that so many of us spend time doing whatever work it is that we do, whether it's, let's say it's for another company. And so you're doing the work every day to build that company and make that company successful. Yet we don't come home and do the work to make ourselves feel fulfilled. We don't do the work to press forward to have the best marriage or the best friendships or the most fulfilling experience of the world. And so I just want to say, I love that. I think it should be your sixth one, do the work. That's what it requires.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, we take it for granted that we don't have to do the work, but you have to. It is hard, but it makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Last question, because I just know for sure that there are people that are listening who do love to cook and are probably fantastic chefs at home and are thinking about creating a cookbook. What would your advice be? Because it's overwhelming thinking about creating, writing, developing any book. But cookbooks, especially maybe to me, because I can barely cook. So it's like, oh my gosh, that just sounds like a giant. What would your advice be to someone who's really interested in doing one?
Well, it depends on how you want to do it. When I first decided I wanted to write a cookbook, I thought I could just write a cookbook and then hand it to a publisher, but that's not how it works. You have to write a book proposal, and that's even it's more work than writing the cookbook. I'm not trying to, you just do it and you figure it online. It tells you how to do it. It has very definite sections. How are you going to market it? Why is it different than any other cookbook? Why do we need this cookbook? Who's your demographic? And you have to say what magazines they read, how old they are.
Right.
So that's your book proposal. Then you have to find an agent. And if you have I would have to say, don't even bother to look for an agent or get your book. If you want to self-publish, that's okay. But if you want to go the publishing route, you have to have a platform. You have to have at least 10,000 followers on any platform, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, at least 10,000 or more, because that's really the only thing they're interested in. Doesn't matter if you have the greatest invention on our planet, you need a platform because they're only interested in selling the book. So if you want to self-publish, and that's fine, and don't worry about that. But if you want to publish with a publisher, then make sure you build up your followers, because that's the first question they're going to ask you is how many followers you have. So it has nothing to do with your cooking. It has to do with, are they going to be able to sell the book? And then of course you have to learn how to create recipes. And, if you do that already, then you know how to do it. If you don't know how to do that, then, it's just such a personal process. How I do it is I take what I crave, I don't even remember how I started, but things that I used to love, like cinnamon buns. How do I make that vegan, oil-free with no sugar? or salt or oil. I love cinnamon bun, so I figured it out, so that was so I create a recipe around, all right, well, I'm going to replace the oil with pumpkin puree. I'm going to replace the sugar with some, whatever, I figured it out. And then that's how I do it. It's not scientific. It's just, that's how I do it. And so you have to figure out your own process, and that takes a long time. You have to have tasters and testers, because when you write the recipe, you're doing it a way that you understand. But if you give you do it, you have to make sure people understand the instructions, because they may be confused. Wait, what do you mean by this? And then you have to rewrite and say, oh, okay. And then you'll understand that, oh, you need to be more clear about this. So it's a long process. It takes a long time. You have to have patience. I started my third cookbook March of 2020, and it's just coming out today. Yeah. So it's a long process. You have to be patient, but listen, if there's a will, there's a way. That's for sure. If there's a will, there's a way.
What's next for you? Yeah,
that's a good question. I want to be more of an animal activist. I am already. I give a lot of money to Farm Sanctuary, which is in Acton, California, because I'm very passionate about saving animals. And I have to figure out how I can do more. So that's my next chapter. And I will let you know how I do. I don't know. I want maybe my own sanctuary. I don't know. But I do give a lot of money to the sanctuaries that already exist, so they could do their job better and save more animals. But for me personally, I like what I do now. I sell courses and I write cookbooks and I help people learn how to be whole food plant-based. So I want to continue to do that. But yeah, you're right. There is something else, and I'm not sure yet what that's going to be.
Yeah, whatever you do, you will do well and with passion and heart. So we're excited for your next this next phase.
Thank you.
So everybody, the Mediterranean Plate, plant-based recipes free from gluten, salt, oil, and sugar. You can get it on Amazon and any other, and also your website, right, Debbie?
Well, they can't, it links to the Amazon. They have to get it on Amazon. But yeah, if you go to my website and you see cookbook, you could just click on the link there and it goes to the Amazon, because it's an exclusive with Amazon, and that's how they have to get it. But yeah, so they can get a Kindle or a hardcover. And if they get it, they should email me at debbie@debbieadler.tv, because I'm giving away a course that teaches you how to make every single recipe in the book. So it's me on video. If you have a little hesitation about a certain recipe, I show you how to do it on video, and I give that away for free when people purchase the book. So just so they know they could get that as well. They just have to email me so I know to let them into the course.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's been really fun talking to you.
Hey folks. Okay. Back by very popular demand is our plant-powered plate fridge magnet, which you are going to receive for free if you leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. So here are the details. Just write your quick review. Does not need to be long, does not need to be a whole story. Just be honest and speak from the heart. Then take a quick screenshot of the review you wrote and email it to us at podcast@switchforgood.org. That's podcast@switchforgood.org. And include your mailing address so we can send you a power plate. We are doing this because the more reviews we garner, the higher we go in search results, which means more folks will learn about our podcast. So the power is in your hands. Leave us a review, and zoom, your power plate arrives at your doorstep.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.